When Rawls talks about conceptions of justice, he divides them into liberal and non-liberal conceptions of justice. So what makes a conception of justice liberal? It's the following. It needs to meet certain specific criteria, right? But it also needs to meet a more general criterion as well. So let me go over both of those. Right? First of all, the specific criteria. It has to have a set of basic liberties. Okay? It has to have some kind of principle of economic justice or distributive justice. And the liberties have to take priority over their concerns about distributive justice. More generally, Rawls argues that for it to be liberal, it has to be such that everyone who supports it could reasonably expect everyone else in society to support it as a free and equal citizen. That means something like this. For everyone else in society that's going to be part of this conception of justice, we have to be able to go to them and say, look, here's reasons why you should accept it as a legitimate way of organizing our basic structure. Not, right, it doesn't now what that means can be kind of complicated. I'm not sure that it means they have to like it or think it's the best, but they have to be able to show to everyone, look, we can reasonably expect you to accept the authority of this conception of justice. And we can do it through open rational argument, not through tricking you as to what's going on. Right? So if the only way that you could get it across on the poor, right, was by deceiving them about how the economic system really worked, that wouldn't count. Right? If it were the case, if they really saw how things worked in a society governed by that conception of justice, they would reject it. Right? That doesn't count. Right? Now, this doesn't mean that everyone will accept it, but it means that we could reasonably expect everyone in society to do so. Right? Now, part of the background idea is this. Right? There's always going to be times when somebody, right, is not going to get something that might advantage them. Right? And I would actually add many times that we can conceive of other reasonable systems where they might get that. For example, school vouchers. Right? In some countries, right, the governments will support various kinds of non-government schools, right, or non-government run schools, including religious schools. In our country, we generally don't do that. Some places have school vouchers, but generally not. Right? Well, if a conception of justice demands one of those two things, right, for it to be liberal, we'd have to be able to say to people who really want to have that, look, here are good reasons why, right, we have a system in place, right, we have a conception of justice that we use to figure out how we're going to set up our basic structure. Right? And given that conception of justice, you can't have this. Right? And the person has to be able to say, all right, I see that. Even though I really want it, and in some sense I think I ought to have it, I can see why you could reasonably expect me to accept this conception of justice. Right? It's not something I have to reject as some kind of tyranny. Right? I see that I can't get what I want or think I should have from this conception of justice. Okay? So that is liberal conceptions of justice. And I should point out, Rawls is very clear that there are multiple different liberal conceptions of justice. He gives us one conception of justice that he calls justice is fairness. But he emphasizes in his later work, particularly Political Liberalism and the Law of Peoples, that it's only one among many liberal conceptions of justice.